Thank you. In the 1964 case of Escobedo versus Illinois, the U.S. Supreme Court wrote, "We have learned the lesson of history, ancient and modern, that a system of criminal law enforcement which comes to depend on the confession," in quotes, "will in the long run be less reliable and more subject to abuses than a system which depends on extrinsic evidence independently secured through skillful investigation." The book that we're going to talk about today, Long Way Home, by author Laura Caldwell, who's right to my right here, deals with a case of wrongful confession, a case built, as they say, that depended on confession. And this was a great problem for Jovan Mosley, who is all the way to my right here, who was the defendant slash victim in this case of justice gone awry. I would like to start our conversation just by giving you some of the background of this case to tell the story, and I'd like to turn to the author just to give us a little capsule summary of what happened and to bring Jovan into the conversation as appropriate.
Well, thank you, and thanks for doing this. It's a delight because I've been reading Eric's work, and he's done a lot of work in wrongful confessions, forced confessions, wrongful convictions, which is something of a passion of mine as of late. But it's very strange because you would not have thought that. I am a lawyer, but I was a medical malpractice attorney and made partner at a law firm, but I was writing on the side just as a hobby. Just kind of, I would attend a book class and they would tell you how to write a novel and I would work on it on the side. Never really thought I would publish it. And then at some time I thought, well, gave it a shot. Nobody was really interested. Bridget Jones wasn't out yet. Sex and the City wasn't out yet. And it had a little bit of that tone. And so people were like, I don't know. So I just kept writing because it made me happy. And I was fortunate enough at a cocktail party one time to meet a woman who had become my editor. She bought a number of books for me, met another editor, and strangely I went from unable to be published to a year and a half later, we'd sold 7 novels. So it was very abrupt, in that way, entry into the literary system. But I wrote chick lit novels, and then I wrote mystery novels, and I taught at Loyola Law School, and that was it. And I really I really felt like I had everything, and I did. But strangely, when I was writing one particular mystery novel called The Rome Affair, I had a couple in the Belmont police station, and the cops have them down the room from each other, and they're going back and forth, and they're saying to the husband, "You know what your wife is saying? She said you pushed her over the edge." And then they're going down to the wife, and they're saying, "Do you know what he is saying down there?" And they're trying to turn them against each other. But I was concerned that I was like channeling Law and Order or something. I didn't really know a lot about forced confessions, so I called this woman Catharine O'Daniel. Didn't know her well at the time, but I knew she was a criminal defense lawyer, a very good one. And I said, "Hey, do forced confessions ever happen?" And she said, "Oh, honey, they happen all the time." And then she said, here's my recent favorite on that, though. She said, "I was in 26 in Cal, the lockup, Division 11, the maximum security. The inmates call it Supermax. She was there to see a client. On the way out, the client got taken first back to his deck, and the guards, because she was in there so frequently, sort of walked away for a second, and she was by herself in Division 11, maximum security, Supermax jail." And she said this alarm bell went off because all of a sudden she saw some inmates coming down the hall and other people were leaning over the banister now. And she kind of thought, wow, maybe this is where it all ends for me at Supermax. And, she has a house in Bolingbrook, and so she wouldn't have thought her life would end there. And then she saw someone pushing a broom, another inmate. And this was scary for her because brooms can be used as weapons. And in Cook County jails, we don't rehabilitate. It's just people waiting for trial. This is a holding cell. So people don't have jobs. We don't rehabilitate them. So there's no reason that child should have a broom. But instead of doing anything, he came up to her and I will turn the story over to Jovan because I want to ask him something. He came up to her and he said, you know, if you don't mind, if you move over, you'll be fine. They won't see you. You know, the guys. And he kind of told the guys to please back away, and strangely, they all followed his, like right away followed his instruction. And so he and Kathy started talking, and I'm going to let Jovan tell you how they met a little bit more. But what struck me is this is the woman who would take on his case, who would say, you've been here for 6 years, you've been in this, he was in that holding cell for 6 years. And this is the woman who would take his case on and essentially save him. And the only reason he met her was because he'd made one small act. I mean, a small act can bring about big changes. So that one, he could have just kept walking by. What did he care? He was in a holding cell for 6 years. But the reason Eric is talking about forced confessions is because the way they got in that holding cell was having Jovan in an interrogation room for 2 days after he'd seen a fight. But I'll let Jovan tell that part of the story.
Okay, well, the way that things happened when I was in the county jail, when I met Catharine O'Daniel, I had been in there maybe a little over 4.5 years. And I came out to do my regular work. I used to clean up in the hallways and things like that. So I was cleaning up and I heard first a lot of noise. And when I looked down the hall, I saw this lady in the hallway. She seemed a little nervous, and the guys were on both sides of her, just asking her a lot of questions and just basically heckling her. So I walked down there casually, acting like I was cleaning up and things like that. And I got to her and I told her, like, if you move to the side just a little bit, they wouldn't be able to see you, and you won't have to worry about them bothering you. So she moved to the side and she started asking me about my case. So I told her that I had been there almost 5 years. And she said, what's going on? I told her that it was nothing. I don't know what's going on. And she said, you don't know? I mean, is there any motions? Is it trial set? Anything like that? I said, no, I don't know. So she said, well, who's your judge? Who's your state's attorney? And we talked, and she said she knew both of them. And after a while, she was like, it was, she couldn't believe that I was in there that long, but she wished me the best, and I told her I would get an officer to take her down. So I went back and got an officer to take her down. When the officer came back up, he just said, I don't know what you did to her, but she said, get in contact with her. So I was like, okay. So I went to the guy who she came to see and asked him about her, and he said that she was charging him $150,000 for one of his cases and like $60,000 for another case. So immediately I was like, okay, well, I can't afford her. So so I dismissed that thought. But over time, over maybe 3 or 4 months, she had become in contact with my judge, with my public defender, and also with my mother. So I really didn't think that she would take the case on. So she took her price down from from as high as it was and said, if I came up with $8,000, that she would take the case. But I was thinking, like, wow, my family really doesn't have that either. So like another month went past and it went down to $3,500.
I did not know.
This was for just for her investigator. So I went to court, and my public defender asked me about her, and I told him, I said, well, I can't afford her, so you don't have to worry about her taking the case. Lo and behold, the next court date, I was in the bullpen just sitting minding my own business, and a lady walked in and said, Jovan Mosley? And I was like, yes. She was like, hi, congratulations, you're my first pro bono case. And I was like, wow, like, really? I really didn't remember her, but I kind of, remembered her face a little. But that was the first time that she ever did a pro bono case, and it was